Ian, thank you very much for joining me.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's good to see you again.
Um, let's start with how you are, how your family is, and hopefully everyone's safe. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, so far so good. Yeah, we're all fine. I've been home working for this is getting into my third week now, so this is strange territory for
I
me.
was going to say, how much of a home bunny have you ever been? How much homework have you done?
Well, I mean, my job is not home based at all, as you can imagine. So I spend more than half my time in London, or at least I used to. And it's about cabin fever
I was going to say, this
rather
is
than
where
any
I'm
other.
having trouble with my missus all the time. It's like, actually, you're in the house too much. I don't know if you've got that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm disrupting everybody else's life pattern, So
Exactly. Let's talk about some of the things. So, I mean, this chat is really about, interviewing people in the energy sector about how we're coping with COVID. And the first thing is, obviously, it's a very, very serious issue. But is it something that when you got the beginnings of this, we all look back and we think, yeah, okay, this is that. How did you quickly respond when you realized that actually the government's saying shut down the business? Can you take us through what you did and what the state of play is for the ABB employees right now?
Yeah, it's a good question, Sumit. We're a global business, so we first started getting the impact of this, of course, very early on in
Right.
in
In
January
China,
in the
yeah,
factories in China.
yeah.
So yes, the factories in China were impacted, very early on, particularly with the major shutdown, and indeed, you could say, well, you looked at the empty streets of central China and you think, well, that can obviously never happen here, and lo and behold, a few weeks later, it has happened. So
Did you as an organization suddenly, because you are global, did you start to get calls from your compatriots over there, your CEOs over in that part of the world, and say, listen, you need to scenario plan for this? Was there a
yes,
decision
we
made that
did.
this could happen? Oh, right.
We did, and we started that scenario planning, as I say, in January, in early January.
Wow.
When this first started to impact. So we were in terms of our communication and our anticipation of what we had to do to our employees and our customers as well. More importantly, was to try and understand what the impact was likely to be, because we had goods coming from China. So we had products that were stuck in factories. We had and just after that, it wasn't long after that before we had products that were on the high seas and were stuck in ports, so
Mm.
quarantined there. So we sort of knew this, was coming in our direction for quite some time. But I mean, no matter what preparedness you put in place, you can't anticipate
No.
the sheer scale and disruption of this across the globe. It wasn't in any of our scenario plans, and clearly it will be for, I think, everybody moving forward.
Of course. Can you talk through some specifics? What's happened to sort of ABB UK? Has it effectively gone to home working, or do you have staff who are in critical roles who still have to come in?
Well, we're from a power point of view, at least, we're clearly a critical supplier to critical businesses, and that's the major infrastructures of water, electricity, gas, less so telecoms, I guess. So we took a view 3 weeks ago now. We started to test the resilience of our systems with people home working. So we had a day where everybody really went home.
This is before the lockdown was actually announced.
Before, yes, yeah,
Right.
yeah, before the lockdown, because we were anticipating a lockdown anyway. And just to see, did everybody have the right PCs, the right equipment, the printers, all the practical stuff, to work from home, but also the resilience of the systems, and the resilience of everybody's broadband network, plus the other networks that we need to get into our confidential systems. So and that worked extremely well. And in fact, it has done. We're, I guess, surprised as to how resilient the systems have been. So we started that nearly 3 weeks ago now. And so when we moved to lockdown, we have everybody who can work from home working at home.
Right.
I mean, there are some, we get to quarter end, and the finance teams, will have to go in the office. But the offices now, I mean, we have a plan for every office in terms of access egress, in terms of how people move in the office, obviously 2-meter separation. And so from an office point of view, those who can work from home will work from home.
Right.
I mean, we have service businesses, project businesses, and I think one of the challenges for us is and factories as well, of course, is how to maintain those factories. And we have quite a large one down in the southwest. And I was speaking to the factory manager this morning. He's working largely as normal, but with a working practice in place to make sure that separation exists. So it can be done, and it is being done.
Is it one of those things where, you look at the side, because your business is so vast and has various different parts, from the office base to the, like you say, the factories, and then the people who are out there doing the people systems. In a way, it's kind of multiple businesses. How do you make that call about, well, look, the factory, how much could we automate, or do we need the crew, or how do we run the crews? Because obviously you have a duty of care as an employer to make sure your staff are safe, but then also there is a business that has to run throughout all of this for all of us.
Yeah, and I mean, we've taken, obviously globally, different governments have different requirements of their population, and social distancing, for example, is 1.5 meters in some countries, 2 meters in the UK. So we take our lead first and foremost from the UK government, because that's really the principal source in terms of keeping people safe, and then we apply our own guidelines on top of that. So as I say, but we have some service businesses, so we have to make sure that they're okay. They have the right PPE, which is getting a bit of a struggle.
Have you got that? It's been a struggle. I've talked to some CEOs trying to get it. It's because obviously the NHS has to take priority, and it's been harder for businesses.
Yeah. And we take that view as well. I mean, there's particular PPE we would like, but that goes to the health service first and foremost, and that's the only right place for it to go. And then we just put in measures and sites, staggered lunching, for example, staggered access egress, that sort of thing, to keep people apart. On the more remote sites, I have to say, one of the issues that we're starting to come across, and have done for the last week or so, is because the sites are remote, the site teams live in hotels, guest houses, they eat at restaurants, cafes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I never have thought of that. Yeah.
And they're all closing. And that's one of the challenges, that we're going to have, is in terms of maintaining business as usual and I'm just talking about critical businesses here. That's one of the challenges that we're going to have.
I don't know how you'd answer this, but I mean, as a CEO, had you ever thought of anything like this in your life? I mean, your career. I mean, you probably planned for loads of different things. Did this ever crop up in your mind?
No, it never did. And I mean, pandemics have come and gone, but never with this impact, and never so global. And of course, we're a globally connected world, we're a globally connected business, and therefore it impacts every part of everything that we do. And it's a struggle, I think, at the moment, to try and conceptualize what business as usual is going to look like in the short term. It's perhaps easier in the longer term, but in the short term, how do we keep the business going, and how do we keep the critical supplies going, and how do we support the electricity infrastructure to make sure the lights stay on? It's as simple as that.
When it comes to supply chains, this is a thing that we really realized during this crisis how connected we are. That the NHS orders certain reagents for the coronavirus tests that come from Italy, bits of equipment that come from, your business must have parts from all over the world that are either on lockdown or goods can't come in. How are you trying to manage that? Because that's one thing we never really think about. We think about people, but we don't think about how the things that we use actually get to us. We just assume they're always there, don't we?
We do, and I think if you look at our experience so far, I mean, apart from the first sort of week or 10 days in China, where everything was closed, I mean, all our factories are open now, and with the right measures in place, and social distancing, and all the rest of it. Exactly the same in Italy. Northern Italy, we have a lot of factories in northern Italy, and they're all operational. That again, they were closed for a week. One was closed for 2 weeks nearly. But again, with the support of, in this case, the Italian government, they view the factories as being critical. So they are happy to support that.
Mm.
And so manufacturing continues. I think getting the goods to where they're needed, that's probably the more difficult challenge, is making sure that the logistics to get them from the factory door to the customer door is more of a challenge. And some customers, of course, now are not accepting any inward goods. So we have to understand and respect that. And as I say, where goods go to site to be constructed as part of a bigger project, the challenge there is not working on site. The challenge is simply getting lodgings and food for the guys who are on site.
What are you doing as a CEO? What is your management team doing? Are you now having to construct a brand new business plan to deal with this?
We it's a really good point. I was talking to one of my colleagues earlier on this morning about that, about the sort of short-term business plan.
I mean,
But what happened?
yeah, because if we've had the chief medical officer's deputy standing and saying it could be 6 months for us all, this could be the new normal. So after the initial shock that we've all pretty much gone through, we're into week 2 now. Humans adjust. So you must have to now think, hang on, this is my new business as usual case scenario.
There's various dimensions to that, Sumit, and it's a great question. There's the short-term stuff, which is, can everybody do and can everybody be productive in the very short term? And that's what our focus has been on for the last couple of weeks or so. And then the question is, what do we do in the medium term? And I had a conversation this morning on that very topic. So let's assume that life is like this until October, so the next 6 months. So what does life look like through that period? And then what does life look like when you come out of that period, and then start whatever business as usual looks like beyond that? And I think, there's, I have to say, there's some parts of this, there's always a silver lining to every cloud, I guess. But if you look at, what will we all be doing from a work point of view beyond coronavirus? There will be certain work norms that probably quite rightly will never come back.
Interesting, isn't it? Absolutely.
It'll just be a different way of doing things. And I think businesses, and everybody's really innovative about this. And I just think beyond that, it's going to be a really interesting time for business, and some of the sort of business legacy issues that we've dragged around with us for goodness knows how many decades and maybe even centuries, will simply disappear. And I think, so much the better.
Yeah, it's interesting because look, I'm not taking away from any of the seriousness of the issue. I myself am on immunosuppressant drugs, and I've got 12 weeks of sitting around. But I actually see a positivity about this. Here we are communicating right now. I'm doing an interview. I'm doing my job with you. You're communicating.
Yeah.
But we suddenly realize, how much do we make those journeys that are not really that important? Could we do business in another way? Are there?
We all do it, and I think in global businesses as well, we probably do it because
We're used to it.
It's a bit like low cost airlines. Why do you go to Belgrade for a weekend? Well, the answer is because you can, and because it's only going to cost you £40 return or something.
Yeah.
So I think there's these sorts of things which I think will be challenged. I think some businesses will be very, very challenged. There's some obvious sectors, and others I think will thrive as a result.
Are you positive? I mean, it's a difficult question to ask at this stage. We're so early, but we've been through many things as a society over the last 100 years, from world wars and economic downturns, big global insecurities, and we will get over COVID. Whenever it happens, we will get over it. So then the question is really this: how do you look forward? Because we're on the beginning of our journey towards net zero for 2050. We've got a massive change in where the globe is now traveling in the direction around energy and sustainability and sustainable goals, all of that sort of stuff. So in a way, the lesson from corona about how we've actually managed to have Formula One companies building us ventilators and companies pulling together, and suddenly we're acting more of a society which we probably never thought businesses could actually just dump that corporate mentality and go, can we all work together? Is there an element of you that's hopeful that we might have a different, more cohesive way of doing business after this?
I think it's more than an element, Sumit. I think there's all sorts of great stuff that has come out of this so far, in spite of the thing being extremely serious and very, very dangerous to to some. But you look at the sort of things that have gone on, and as you said, companies, and ours is one of them. We've said to the government, look, we think we can make ventilators. Do you
Wow,
want them?
fantastic.
And that's in one of the UK factories. So it's a really interesting place to be, and I think there's a little bit of caution there, for me, that says, well, look, we're not traveling, industry is sort of closing down. That might have a short-term positive effect on climate change, but that's not sustainable. That's not the way, absolutely not the way to solve the net zero issue. That's something completely different, and we have to put our minds to that. But I think there are certain things, and I think the social aspect, CSR aspect, if you like, of what we're all doing at the moment. We're designing a volunteer scheme, for example. So if some of our employees wanted to volunteer for the NHS or anything else, they can do so. And I think there's a different dimension to CSR than the sort of textbook stuff that we've all known and loved over the last few years or decades.
Do you think this will change you as a business leader?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if it doesn't, it's I think we're all human beings. We learn out of this stuff, and humans are great at learning these things and and adapting to very extreme situations. And as I said at the beginning, I'm not quite sure how I adapt to cabin fever, because I'm not that sort of animal, But
Yeah.
but apart from that, I think there's so much learning that can come out of this, and we have our senior leadership team call every 8 o'clock every morning. What are we doing? It was all about the statistics to start with, and now it's has been for a couple of weeks now. I guess the practical actions. What do we have to do? You get into solution mode, I suppose, quite quickly. But there's another aspect of it, which is the sort of isolation of home working, and how do you create that social aspect in a by definition a place that we're at just now, where social isolation is so important, and supporting people. And we had a call this morning on exactly the same thing. How do we combat something like mental health when people are forced to work in a situation that they're simply not used to? So it does make you think in slightly different ways. It's maybe not radical, I wouldn't say, because we're sort of doing that anyway. But it does force you to look ahead and plan ahead, and try and do the best for not just your customers but also your employees, because that's the most important part.
Well, Ian, I wish you well, and I wish the team there well, and hopefully we'll get through this. But thank you very much for your time and your insight today.
Thanks very much, Sumit. Take care.